Welcome to the Unriveted podcast, where we talk about technology initiatives such as digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and people. Today, our broadcast is brought to you by, guess who, John? You know. Go ahead, say it.
I have no idea. We have this. We only have a handful.
Okay,
of,
we're going back to one of our favorites, Wingnut Investments, where tightening the
Mm.
ROI is just a screw away.
Oh, my favorite.
So, John, I recognize we have a guest. Would you like to make the intro?
I will. Thank you, Martin. All right. Today we are joined by Alan Boehme, former CTO of H M Group, Procter and Gamble, and Coca-Cola Company, among other achievements. So, Alan, welcome to the show today. Thanks for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you for a quick intro of your own.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. So, you hit three of the most recent companies, but I've been with about 10, 15 different companies over the years, as in various C-suite roles, whether it's CIO, head of strategy, architecture, head of innovation. In addition to the ones that you mentioned, ING, Coca-Cola. You mentioned Coca-Cola, but ING, DHL. Juniper Networks and many others. And that's sort of one side of me. Then the other side is I'm an active angel investor and active advisor to a number of startups here in the Silicon Valley and in Israel. Three of them are unicorns or have been unicorns and still are. A couple of them are going to become unicorns one day, I hope. And a few others are just in some very interesting areas that I thought I would invest in, from agri-tech to battery tech to fintech, and just really like the founders. So I thought I would spend some time working with them as well.
That's awesome, Alan. If you if you look back on your career and you could look at some of the technology initiatives you worked on, like could be digital transformation or the new shiny object, artificial intelligence, are there any highlights or learnings that you might want to share to kind of what you might do differently today?
Yeah, I think one of the things to remember is that a lot of the tech that we see today is just the next generation of things that were from yesteryear. We talk a lot about differential pricing and loyalty programs. Well, I say 25 plus years ago, I was involved in one of the first groups of people that started in yield management systems in the airline industries or the frequent flyer programs. And we talk about these in different terms today. Those we think about today as being things having to do with big data. Back then, we were talking about operations research and with big data. People today are talking about using neural nets. I first programmed a neural net way back on an Apollo computer, which most people don't even remember. So this stuff just keeps repeating itself, and which is great because we learn from the past, and new people take it forward to where the potential is based on where compute, networking, and other things are. But it's been fun just to be going along for the ride and participating and helping out in many of these different things that are just common today from years ago.
Interesting stuff.
Very interesting stuff. If you had to take anything forward now as an angel, what would you look for in your investments?
Well, I've been saying for about 5 or 6 years that I think the clouds are dead, and I think that you can't beat latency by operating in a cloud, and the networking, even with 5G, just isn't there yet. Most applications aren't actually designed to be able to take advantage of that. So I've been very much a voice for edge computing for quite some time, and recently invested in an edge database company even. So I put my money where my mouth is there. I also think that the next version of Web3 technologies are really going to change things again, or have the potential to change things again. Got sort of a little bit of a bad rap with the crypto winter that we're going through, and then you look at you look at AR and VR, and that's sort of in a winter as well now. But I think that we're on the verge of combining these things together, along with artificial intelligence and other things that will create a brand new way of interacting with customers, consumers, and provide all kinds of new opportunities for us in the near future.
Great. Yeah. A follow-up question of sorts for that, Alan. Thinking about your work with startups, and obviously in the technology space where you have your expertise. Do you find that nowadays, or even in the past, 3 to 5 years, we'll say, when working with startups or just um, interacting with some of the founders or members, are there any areas that you would say startups in the technology space, or maybe there's too many people like moving in that direction, and there's not enough people moving in this direction?
Well, I mean, I think startups chase the money, and the money right now in the valley is all about generative AI. So, it's the Wild West that's out there right now, and we don't know who's going to win. We don't know who's going to lose. We don't know who's going to get shot. We just don't know. And you always see this when certain technology is on top of mind. Whether it was crypto, all of a sudden all the crypto companies evolved, and then we had ICOs, and then we had SPACs, and then we had everything else. People follow the money, which isn't a bad thing. But I think you also have to decide, are you doing something just for the money? Are you doing something for society? Are you doing something for the planet? What's your purpose? And I really enjoy working with investors that are doing things for a purpose, not just to make money. Making money can be easy. It can be very hard. But if you work hard and you have the right product at the right time and the right market fit, that's the easy part. But the question is, what are you really contributing in the long run? And I think many times people in the startup community forget that. And some of the most successful entrepreneurs, people that have built large companies, actually come back around and look at that all the time.
Right. Kind of building on that question too, and I think Martin might have asked something about this too. You've obviously been working in the technology field for a long time, and you started off our conversation saying that a lot of the stuff that we see nowadays is really just kind of the next generation or the next version of stuff that started in the past. So based on that concept, and obviously there's no right answer to this because it's your opinion, but if we take that and move that forward, 5, 10, 15 years from now, is there anything that you see that we're looking at nowadays, how you envision that will look like in, the next several years ahead, or maybe it will be entirely different?
Well, if I had that, I'd probably be running a large VC or PE firm or something at this point. I mean, I can just look at trends, and I consider myself a little bit of a trend spotter, sometimes a futurist, but really in a pragmatic way. As I said, things are going to push out to the edge more and more. We're already seeing the revolution that's happening in the network. You can see what Starlink is doing, both from a technology perspective, but also a geopolitical perspective. We can see things that are happening in the oceans today, where we're now generating energy and able to create beacons that actually can track the swells that are going on and understand the impact of the ocean. So there's just so many different things that we can take away here. I'm working with one startup called Interplant, and they've changed the genome sequence, as I understand it, a bit within the seeds, but we're already seeing a 20% improvement in the yield of some of the crops that they're able to grow. And you think about the crops, they actually are communicating. So this isn't really just an agri-tech play, it's a data play. And they're building up the largest database of talking plants in many ways, if you want to think of it that way. Another one I'm involved in is a flying car, Jetson 1. And it's fantastic. It's actually classified as an ultralight. And you can go to YouTube and you can see the videos of this. And that's going to change individuals flying. That's going to change the ability. It doesn't take a license to fly it. It's going to change transportation patterns. It's going to change all kinds of things in the future. So I think that anything you touch, whether it's in the air, whether it's in the water, whether it's on the ground, whether it has to do with quantum computing or whatever, this is a very, very exciting time. And you can see lots of changes and a lot of positive things occurring.
This is super interesting. I have this visualization of the Jetsons coming to life here, and and having my little jetpack. I've seen plenty of jetpack demos of late. If you haven't seen some of the latest ones, the water enabled ones that are more sprayers, and they're pretty fun to watch. People go upside down and then plow into the water, and or go flying across like a military pilot and land on a building out of the blue. That's pretty amazing stuff. My career is a little behind yours, and watching traversion of technology trends and things, and I think the bar for learning technology is lowered now with what we have with generative AI, And so you can learn concepts and techniques a little easier for simple development of creating a product, whether it's you're coding up something or you're drawing a mechanical design. And I think that's a super big enabler moving forward. When we talk about things for good and things for the planet, like for example, hydro power generation. I get passionate about those. Are do you do you feel that we're going more towards that this carbon neutral point? I know I just went all over the place with you, Alan. Are we still just going to burn up the planet with more Python generating random data for AI experiments?
Well, I mean, I think some of this really is geopolitical nature, much more so than having to do with actually good business sense or where we're going. I mean, we are going to be needing more and more power and more electricity to do things because we are processing more information. We want things faster. We're a society here that really can't wait, and it's always more and more and more. Now, the good news is some of the technologies that have been out there for years are being recast, and you're going to be able to reuse those things. I'm involved in a company that is taking nuclear waste, some radioisotopes from nuclear waste, and being able to create energy. So we're already seeing that come up, being able to start coming. As I said, we're seeing energy created from waves in the ocean and being able to capture that. So I'm very positive on where things are going to go, but we really are in a position now where energy and energy consumption is something we have to look at. Hopefully the rest of the world and people catch on, and this becomes something that we pull together on. But again, there's so much political strife, there's so much social strife. We also have to be careful what technology may do to that in the future.
100% agree. When you look at if you had to give advice to yourself starting a new career today, any thoughts there?
Well, where I started originally was I was originally going to become an attorney, and I'm glad I didn't. The world doesn't need any more lawyers. That's for certain. And I'm hoping that the generative AI actually becomes the first one that takes out about half of those people, because you no longer need to do all this research. So I would say the attorneys need to be watching out. But I think if I had some advice, is just follow your passion from an early age. If you're following your passion, you're going to do something that you enjoy, and if you're doing something you enjoy, it's not work. So find something that means something to you. And I think as you go through life, when you're younger, certain things are important. As you get older, other things are important. We always say when you're young, people are chasing money because you have all the time in the world. But as you get older, you're chasing time because you realize it's a fleeting thing. So the question is, how do you get a balance there? And what is the right balance for you personally? What's the right balance for your family and your friends? And I think many of us over-index, especially in the Silicon Valley, on work. If you go over to Europe, where I've spent the last few years working, you see that it's a completely different environment, and the priorities are a lot different. I don't know if we're ever going to know which is more important, but I think that's a personal decision. But I think it's something we all have to really contemplate. And when you start a career, it's not just one career. I started in marketing and ended up in technology. But remember, I went to school to become a lawyer. So, we go through different chapters in our lives. Hopefully you make some good choices, and I'm getting ready to go into chapter 3, and we'll see what's next for me. And it may be something completely different, or it might be just more of the same. I don't know. We'll find out.
It's great advice.
So, John, do you have any good inspirational questions?
Oh, well, I don't know if I would call them inspirational questions. I mean, I did have a question, thinking about, again, kind of back into the AI and the energy conversation that we were having, because those are two obviously very closely linked together, right? The more powerful our models become, the more, energy it takes to train them. And we've seen that we've moved from GPUs to TPUs, and now we have entire companies that are working to design. Anyway,
John has spiraled beyond his knowledge. Alan, I'm sorry. I apologize. John is a software AI guy, and the world of hardware is very distant.
Well, I think he's already made. He's the one that's sitting in Hawaii, and you and I aren't. So there's got to be something going on there.
Good point. All right.
Right.
Kudos,
right. Well, my quick question is, so it seems that right now, the way that things are moving with AI is the bigger the model, the better. The more parameters that we can train in the model, the better, right? So obviously that takes more hardware capabilities. And as we've seen, the more hardware capabilities in turn creates more energy consumption. Where do you think like the balance is between that? Do you think that the ideal future scenario is we create a new type of processing hardware that is energy efficient, or do you think it's going to be more on the developing a model that's just more efficient at processing information? I hope that makes sense.
Well, I mean, if you look at history, the answer is both. I mean, I mean, you look at historically what's happened, you're going to see both happen. But I think one of the questions that I have, and I'm certainly not an expert, but have been spending a lot of time looking into things anyway, is do we actually need all these large models? Or is there just a few large models that are needed? And the reality is what we need is much more focused, much more industry specific, or much more purpose driven, smaller models, because that's what's going to drive things on a day-to-day basis. Again, I'm not the expert in this area, but I do know that from many years ago in networking, we always used to talk about differential updating because there wasn't any point in capturing every single piece of information because a lot of things didn't change. We only wanted to capture those things that were changing and then updating our algorithms from there. Perhaps that's an approach. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but perhaps that's an approach that we have to think about here is how much information is enough for the value of the decision that's going to be made versus let's grab everything. A few years ago, we were all talking about data lakes, and some people still are, and then we called them data swamps, and a lot of people drowned in these things. But first thing I did when I went to H&M was I went off and started creating a data mesh. And the reality, the reason was I wanted to push the data closer into the business where the people can make decisions. I wanted to put the data where the people that are actually responsible for the creation of the data are located. And I wanted to be able to do things with response time that was sufficient and to meet the needs of the business and not having to worry about going and running large jobs against these large data sets. So maybe that's an approach for what's going to happen with generative AI. I'm not an AI expert. I'm certainly not a machine learning engineer, but it seems to me based on what I've seen historically, going back to how things have happened, have come about historically, maybe that's where we're going to end up. But I'll defer that to the people that are much more knowledgeable than me.
Perfect.
This has been awesome, Alan. We're going to wrap up here on behalf of the Unriveted crew. John and I, we really loved having you on here and hearing some of your insights, and look forward to hearing more about Chapter 3, of course. And who knows, maybe you might become an Imagineer in your future.
Well, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, there's lots of wonderful opportunities out there. It's just the right person, the right place, the right time, for the right mission. And I've taken some time off now for the last month and a half for the first time in about 12 years, and I've been enjoying it. Been looking at everything from building a house down on an island in the Gulf to relocating to other parts of the world. Who knows? But tech's always going to be part of what I do. Every time I meet new entrepreneurs, new students, I guest lecture at Carnegie Mellon, at Berkeley, at University of San Francisco, and elsewhere. And when I meet people, I get excited, and then I get drawn in, and I see new problems, and that's really what I enjoy doing is sharing what I've learned over the years with people. We always talk about how unique the Valley is, and the Valley really is unique, and I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for that. It doesn't matter what these other cities do, but the willingness for people here to listen and have a coffee with somebody they don't know, the willingness for people to just give a helping hand and not ask for anything in return, the willingness to be genuinely happy when people are successful. I've been all around the world, and that's what makes the Valley work, and it's not easily replicatable. So I think that the Silicon Valley is going to continue to drive a lot of the future, and I'm looking forward to being part of it one way or another.
Awesome. Thank you for being on Unriveted. We're going to call that a wrap.
Goodbye.